Hey guys, welcome. We are now past week 8 in the NFL season, 9 weeks to go. Um, uh, Excuse me, sorry, got a little distracted. We are now past week 8 in the NFL season, about the halfway point. After we're through next week's games, we're definitely down the stretch to, the last half of the season, I guess. Week 9 is kind of the middle ground, I guess. But a lot of interesting games this week. I'm sorry, I'm a little out of sorts, you guys. I'm kind of I'm kind of indifferent over this week and some other things going on in my life that I won't, go over. Not even specifically my life, but just some unfortunate things going on in the world, I guess, is all I'll say. But this is an NFL podcast, so I'm gonna try my best. So, um, we are gonna be looking at the games actually through ESPN. I decided that it was kind of time to kind of switch over. I think that ESPN just has a better they just have a better like layout type of thing. I do have NFL brought up, but here, let's move to where you guys can see the screen type of thing. I do have NFL brought up because we will use them to watch for trades. I'll be refreshing it here and there, so we can see what's happened. There's already been some trades that have happened. Most notably, the Commanders seem to be sellers right now, which kind of surprises me a little bit. I'm not sure what the Commanders' plan is. They say they found their guy Howell, but they're not willing to at least see if this team can perform, which I think that they can. And they seem to get rid of some of their, better assets in my opinion. With Chase Young getting dealt to the Niners, which is really intriguing because the Niners are already a pretty stacked D line and they're just adding Chase Young, who I still think is, pretty good. Is still a pretty good player, but they only had to trade a third round for him. They essentially fleeced the Commanders, I feel like. And then the Bears traded a second round for Montez Sweat, who, I think that they're close to around the same caliber of player, in all honesty. Maybe Chase Young has a little bit more upside, but they're close to the same age. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but the Commanders being sellers, I just can't imagine what it'd be like to be a Commanders fan. I would be pissed off if I was, but moving on to the screen, we'll go on and we'll start to look at the games. I'm not really going to look at, too much, I guess, here, but Buffalo coming up with the win. I did predict them to win this game. I think they're just a better team. I do think that, Tampa Bay kind of, underperformed. The thing about them is that they don't have a run game similar to last year where it just isn't helping them, to do well. And it's putting a lot of pressure on Baker, a lot like it did with Brady. But Brady, I think, had a pretty, sound year stats wise, even though the team wasn't doing well type of thing. But, yeah, overall, I just think looking at this, it's like, you have Josh Allen have a really good game, really good rating. Um, Obviously, you know, was sacked twice, type of thing. But James Cook with a pretty sound game and just a lot of distribution around. And surprisingly, Stephon Diggs not doing super well, I guess. Having 9 receptions on 12 targets. But yeah, Baker had a fumble. Devin Tompkins had a fumble. Crazy, I guess, where they obviously recovered, those as well, could be a lot worse. But yeah, goodness, Buffalo doing, a really good job of sacking, Baker several times. And ultimately, he was only able to get out, a few times. And obviously, most of the bulk of his yards was gained off of one carry. But it's nuts to me. I think that Tampa Bay is just suffering from the same woes they were last year, where they just aren't able to run it. You look here, and I mean, they have a pretty good average, but I mean, maybe they just felt like they couldn't run it later in the game. Who knows? But not surprising to me. I think that, Josh Allen really came out to play this game, and yeah, I just, not surprised too much about this game. Next game that we're looking at Patriots Dolphins. Looks very similar to the first time that these teams met. You could say that the Dolphins were held to, a low amount of points for their standards. But then, New England having won the week before against the Bills, I just, Mac Jones, 19 of 29 isn't terrible, but overall, it's just like, you have Tua throwing it 45 times and he's got 324, 324, yards, not the most insane thing, still at a pick, but yeah, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill just taking over, which is what, I kind of expect from them. Even Chase Claypool, contributing, who, they acquired, several weeks ago now from the Bears. But yeah, Dolphins, one of the 6-2 teams, which there's like four of them right now. I still worry about their defense. Yeah, Ramsey had a pick, but it's like Mac Jones, it was just a bad throw, terrible decision. Don't know why he was throwing that. But we'll move on because this game wasn't too interesting to me. We'll go ahead and we'll look here and see if there's any more trades. Um, I guess on a once, but going to the Jets and the Giants, I fully expected this to kind of be a close game. The offenses, kind of being what struggle on these two teams, but like I said, the Giants have a pretty sound defense. They did look somewhat questionable sometimes, tackling Brees Hall, but you know, mainly off of the catch. Obviously, a very sound run game where it's like you look at this and Zach Wilson, their leading rusher. Obviously they don't do design QB runs with him. That's not their style of offense, really. And God forbid, they want to get Zach Wilson hurt, even though many people are saying that he, type of thing. But to have this many attempts, I guess, without a pick is kind of a good thing, I think. And he was sacked 4 times, so he had the pressure on him. Didn't complete 50% of his passes, but yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But then, yeah, no, the thing about that I think about though too is that you have Tyrod Taylor going out with an injury, and then you have Tommy DeVito, coming into the game and clearly not being able to do that much. But Saquon having, being the workhorse for this game, still not having an insane game by any means, but he produced. And he I just don't know what to say about the Giants. Like their QBs are going to keep getting banged up the more the more sacks that they allow, type of thing. It's like Tyler Taylor didn't have a fumble here, and then they had 3 recoveries, because I mean there was fumbles lost by Zach Wilson. But yeah, overall a very sloppy game to me. Where it's like Kayvon Thibodeau was getting after Zach Wilson, and he's a really good player. Both the O lines are kind of, pretty bad to be honest with you. So I, this just overall very sloppy game. And then New York comes away with it in overtime, off of a field goal. So obviously multiple possessions in overtime, so just a sloppy game. Moving on, we have the Jaguars in Pittsburgh. I did call Jaguars number on this game. I think that they're quickly becoming one of those teams where, Trevor Lawrence is coming into his own. I think this is very impressive to look at. I think that this is very impressive to be looking at because the Pittsburgh defense is one of the best in the league, in my opinion, and it's kind of crazy that, Kenny Pickett went out with an injury, and then you have Trubisky coming in, and having 138 yards. And you can't even really blame, I guess, Matt Canada really that much, but it's like no run game to speak of. But I've been saying this that I think the Jacksonville defense strength is their run defense. They seem to shut down a good number of running backs and they force you to pass, and it's like looking at this, definitely get the ball spread around. George Pickens, their deep threat, really limited, I guess, with one catch on 5 targets and just not what you would expect, from them. Even though I just think that Matt Canada I don't know, he needs to find a consistency here because it's not like they were up against an insane like defensive passing unit, to be honest, with the Jacksonville, and they were able to get, some turnovers, I guess Pittsburgh was, and even with the added opportunities, you're still only putting up 10 points, which is just unacceptable, I feel like, in today's league. But yeah, I Jacksonville, I think, is really coming into their own. I think Pittsburgh is still pretty good, but the thing that's going to kill them is their lack of offense. So, yeah, good win for Jacksonville in this game. And now moving on to the next game, which I was, on the fence about this only because we knew Will Levis was starting, but then I was like, this is a Tennessee team that has been abysmal in the past. They obviously got 4 TDs under Will Levis. There's speculation that there is speculation that, Tannehill might be traded. We have less than 50 minutes until the deadline, you know, now, but I think, Tannehill may be staying put because, even though Will Levis had a good game type of thing, who knows if he's um, won over, the coaching staff because it's only one win. They were going up against an Atlanta Falcons team that does have a pretty good defense, you know, but clearly, this is a team that also said they aren't going to trade Derrick Henry. They firmly put that down, and he hasn't been dealt yet. When many thought that, oh, he could be on the table to go to like the Ravens or, I mean, any number of teams. I feel like Henry is a guy that it's like you could bring onto a team, that has a passing attack and, instantly plug him in if they don't have a feature back already, that they wouldn't be willing to give up that much for him, in that case. But Will Levis, crazy. The first pick in the second round had to wait. D Hop finally had kind of the game, and if him and D Hop have chemistry, that's going to be great for him. Being able to have that guy that he can target. Like I'm not a huge D Hop fan, but he does catch the ball. He has good hands, type of thing. I just don't like his attitude, I guess. But yeah, DeAndre Hopkins clearly finally still having, a game that, a lot of wide receivers would dream of having. Probably wanted more yards, but 3 TDs. And then Westbrook Kine here, having a TD pass, but I guess, you still see the struggle besides Hopkins on this team. And let's see if they can continue. But if they have a sound rushing attack like they did with Henry, and D Hop and Will Levis have good chemistry, this is a pretty talented roster in duo, with them. And I mean, Ritter looking, you know, somewhat shaky before going out. I guess Taylor Heineke not doing a good job, really just missing the ball on most of his passes, But yeah, Ritter getting beaten up, which is surprising me with Tennessee, where it's like this is a team that hasn't really been getting a whole lot of sacks. But yeah, the usual suspects of who would be getting them is is, Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry III, Jack Gibbons, and then Danico Autry, who, I think is a pretty sound player as well. But looking at this, you have the Falcons lose, and then they're tied with New Orleans with a 4-4 record. And I mean, Tampa Bay, clawing at their heels. But I guess the crazy thing about the AFC South is they're likely only going to have one team unless you have one of these bottom three step up, but a very close race. And maybe that's what Tennessee thinks. Maybe they think that, maybe Jacksonville might slip near the end of the year. Who knows if they go back to their old ways, but a great win by Tennessee and, good debut for Will Levis. Moving on, we have Carolina and Houston. I really didn't think that this game would be this way. The Carolina defense has been lackluster, to say the least, you know, this year, where they haven't been able to hold anybody. And then you, of course, have CJ Stroud, who has essentially, I think before this game, he had thrown for like nearly double what Bryce Young has in terms of yardage, and has been having a great year. And I mean, obviously, looking at this team, the Houston Russian Pierce able to have a pretty decent day, I guess, and Singletary doing his thing. I think that Nico Collins definitely had a down day. Only 6 targets for 4 completions on 30 yards. Noah Brown being their leading, but obviously clearly not a good passing day type of thing. And then you have, a Carolina Panthers team that obviously with a low scoring game, it's still pretty good that they had the ball distributed the way that they did around. It seems like Bryce One is leaning on Thielen quite a lot. That veteran wide receiver that can, still catch the ball fairly well. I just don't think he's what he once was in terms of speed and his feistiness. But, looking at this, it's kind of crazy to me that Bryce Young was sacked so many times, but yet he was still able to have, a lot more yards than CJ Stroud, who was only sacked twice. No interceptions by either, but crazy interesting that this is the game that Carolina shows up for, but who knows, maybe he felt, maybe Stroud was Bryce Young was motivated by the fact that these two were the top QB prospects in the draft. And I mean, who knows? You lose so much eventually, maybe you're going to break through, and they are a young, feisty team on Carolina. So impressive by them, and definitely a hard loss for Houston, given the Carolina Panthers their first win of the season. Moving on to Rams Cowboys, I kind of predicted that. I thought this would be a closer game than people would expect, but obviously Stafford getting injured does not help. Was doing not even that great beforehand type of thing. And then Brett Ripien coming in and being 5 for 10, but essentially in garbage time. Cause this game was out of hand in the first half. I feel like for the Rams, clearly having 9 points to, what is that? 33, not a good look. And then you're still only able to put up 11, afterwards. So, a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, and a field goal in the second half. And, and obviously Dallas just chipping away at your team, still really not running the ball very much. I feel like, they really didn't hold back in this game. I'm not sure why they would, be picking on the Los Angeles Rams. Clearly the game was won, but they didn't really run it that much to really milk the clock in the second half. Dak Prescott having a good game, still having an interception, which baffles me. It's like, this is one of the reasons why I just don't think he's very legit. You're in a game where you're absolutely dominating, but you can still make mistakes. That's the type of thing that it's like, the blemish of the interception minor detail, but it goes to show me that it's like, if you're up against a better team that was, and you're going up against Los Angeles Rams team that is clearly not playing their best. Puka Nakua finally having kind of a slum of a game, with really not much to speak of from receptions, you know, even though when they did have completions, they were obviously chunk completions, but and crazy to think that it's like their average is the same as Dallas, so pretty crazy. Deron Bland now, Deron Bland now with, another pick six. He's got more touchdowns than some, he's got, more touchdowns than some wide receivers do this year with 3 pick sixes, type of thing. But clearly, like, Stafford just threw a very pitiful ball. It reminded me, honestly, a lot of the Ramsey pick this, where it's like, oh, why did you throw this? It was just the most gimme kind of pick six ever, and just very uncharacteristic, and just resemblance of how bad, the Rams' day was in the passing game. Except for when they completed passes, but at a very, a low percentage. Let's go ahead and look at, whether there's any more trades type of thing. Um, yeah, interesting. So, yeah, nothing else. Does this really say anything? Let me see here quick. Oh, well, this doesn't tell us anything. Okay. We'll refresh here, see if there's anything that ESPN has. Yeah, nothing else. So now moving on to my Packers, when they went up against the Vikings, I think that this was kind of the gut punch for the Packers season, to be honest with you. I think that this just kind of proves uh what is going on with the Packers. I'm sorry, the screen is really getting kind of bright and it's glaring at me. Kirk Cousins getting injured really sucks. I Even though I'm a Packers fan, I'm not going to say that I'm happy about their season probably getting ruined because of this. It's interesting because you win, 4 straight after, being 0-4. You rise up through the division, and, now you're in second place with a 500 record with 9 more games. 9 more games this season, and you lose Kirk Cousins. I will admit he's been getting, really good. He's been getting really good protection type of thing, and the Packers weren't really able to really get to him. Even on the sack, the second sack, it was really only because I feel like, Kirk Cousins, his Achilles obviously, sprung out, on a non-contact before he tried, when he was trying to run on it, and it's mind-boggling in the sense that it's like he was going to take off, same as Rodgers, I guess, and now he's hurt for the rest of the year, and the situation is interesting in Minnesota because of it. I think that Kirk Cousins is going to land on a team next year, but it was brought up that he's made, quite a bit of money, through his NFL tenure by essentially playing the market type of thing. But now the Vikings, who they decided really not to trade anybody, Harrison Smith, Danielle Hunter, trying to think of some other names. I think that KJ Osborne was asked about, even though he's been like a security blanket type receiver for them for, a number of years now. But I think that this team was ready to roll, and they're going to have to play, a different kind of ball game, going forward, because who knows? They traded, I didn't bring this up earlier, but they traded for Joshua Dobbs from, the Cardinals, because I mean, I guess the feeling is that Kyler Murray's going to be back this week, is what I assume. I don't think that they would have traded him had Kyler Murray not been ready, even though, because they could have evaluated him more. Because the thing about Kyler Murray is, who knows if at this point, they see him as the QB of the future still, because like who knows with the Cardinals, where it's who knows with the Cardinals what is going to go on, in the off season, whether they get rid of Kyler, whether they do like a I mean, they're kind of already in like a super full rebuild with some players that are scrappy, but who knows who they're going to retain, who's going to be starters even next year. The thing that I'll say about this game that really kind of surprised me, and that nobody can really give the Packers crap for, I think, this week, is that the Packers' run defense was a lot better. The return of Devondre Campbell, Devontae Wyatt wasn't on the injury report, I think. So you have him, Clark, and TJ Slaton, and then they have the usual linebacker core: Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Devondre Campbell, and then Quay Walker, who is able to kind of play more downhill and aggressive, because you have Devondre Campbell, who is pretty good in coverage, good against the run, kind of a jack of all trades that has found his place with the Packers. And when healthy, he's proven that he's just a very reliable linebacker, and with the way that Madison has been, running, and then Cam Akers did have, they've obviously each had a couple of decent runs, a 10-yarder and a 9-yarder, but this looks to me like a very stout run defense by the Packers, that many were like, "Oh, the run defense is so bad," And obviously the week before against, the Broncos were, and it was just poor tackling and just poor run defense by the Packers the week before, where it's like, but I mean, they ultimately would clamp down once they were close to the red zone, clearly, because obviously, last week's Packers game against Denver, they didn't give up that many points. It was one touchdown off of a pass play and a bunch of field goals. But looking at my Packers, there's some things that I was really happy with Love about. And, even though he was 24 of 41, at least his, passing percentage was over 50%. He was able to pass for over 200 yards, because it seems like this year, even getting over 200 yards has been a tall task for the Packers. And looking at the receptions, yeah, Jaden Reed finally, having some exposure. Christian Watson, I think, needs to have some balls, put near him, and that sort of thing. But Dontavian Wicks with a kind of uncharacteristic drop. Romeo Dobbs, unfortunately, not being able to come down with, all the balls thrown his way. But some drops, which just never help. Luke Musgrave kind of nowhere to be found. I'm pretty sure his first, Love's first pass was completed to Musgrave for like 3 yards, and just overall just a not kind of a non-factor, but pretty lucky, I guess, where Aaron Jones and Jordan Love both had fumbles, but then you have, Jenkins was there, Zach Tom, and then even Devontae Wyatt, obviously there for the defensive one, so he dodged many bullets on the two that the offense had. But overall, this kind of looked like a game where it's like Jordan Addison, was doing really well. A couple of, getting kind of banged up, honestly, like by some, gain tackles type of thing that I think shook him up, to where he wasn't as effective. And even one of his, would-be touchdown passes being pried out by Keyshawn Nixon. I think that, this could have honestly been a very close game, had the Packers not, the interception by Love setting the Vikings up, and, really good field position, and them getting a touchdown. If I say this easily could have been a 17-10 game, I feel like, is very uncharacteristic. But I I just overall I don't think that this really, was I mean it was a good win for the Vikings, don't get me wrong, but overall I think that that Green Bay we beat ourselves again without being able to put up points. And stay on the field, and it was kind of the same old that we've had the whole season. The only highlight to this game to me is that we had some sketchy, pass plays defended, and that's one thing I guess I will say is that I couldn't stand how Barry kept playing so conservatively. We weren't able to get to Kirk Cousins really at all the whole game, pretty much. And even when it was like 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 7, and it was these long third downs that like, oh, it should be hard for them to complete these, they were essentially free. And it drives me absolutely insane that Barry refuses to play kind of this hard-nosed ball and adapt his defense. Like, I'm not going to lie, after this game, even though I don't think the defense, it was really their fault, they're just, they're just playing the way that, the coach is telling them to. I just think that, this with the team that we have, the scrappy players that we have on defense, this could be an easily physical team, a lot like, the 49ers, in my opinion, because it's like there's too much talent. There's too much talent that this defense isn't performing better. And it just pisses me off, And then the offense, clearly the offensive struggles have just been apparent all year, and I'm not going to talk anymore on that. Not running the ball enough. Clearly not giving, Aaron Jones his time to shine. And when he's really the veteran presence, skill player on offense that should be, the focal point, and then you complement that with having Love do play action or rollouts, because he seems to do really well on rollouts, but they don't do very many of those, which is odd to me. Moving on to Saints Colts. I can't actually remember who I predicted to win this game. I think I said the Colts. But New Orleans offense finally came alive. They had, clearly a good amount of rushing, this game for touchdowns, and Derek Carr putting up 300 yards. Very good. You have, Gardner Minshew struggling this game, and but then they have Jonathan Taylor, who I think that they should have leaned on more, because clearly the Saints run defense just didn't show up this game, looking at this, but they only run it, a combined, and without disregarding Minshew's, because obviously they don't design a run play for him, 23 times, and I get it that it's coming down to the wire where essentially, you're down, but you can't just abandon the run, especially with guys like Jonathan Taylor and then even Zach Moss, who has been performing well. So you can have fresh guys coming in and gouging in the second half. But yeah, overall, a great game by the Saints. Rashid Shaheed and his speed, pretty crazy stat line here. I don't know how the Colts, I understand how they get gouged once, but 3 times essentially, where it's like, he averages 50, half a football field on every catch, essentially 2/3 if they're always getting touchbacks type of thing. But good win by New Orleans in a tight division, obviously. Eagles Commanders. I think this game, played out exactly kind of how I thought it would. I did say by like a touchdown type of thing. The Commanders clearly just not having a secondary. I wonder if the fact that they only got to Hurts twice played a role in the trading of Sweat and Young. Goodness, I'm sorry. But clearly looking at this team, you look at who got the sacks. You have Sweat with 1, and then you have Casey Toohill with 1, and clearly looking at this, uh, not really not even a stat by Chase Young on here. But, no, Kobe Dean playing really, really well, middle linebacker for them. Solo tackles 11. And then you have, Hurts throwing for 300 yards off 38 passes. Really, really good. DeAndre Swift kind of having a lull of a game. But clearly, you have Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and Goddard. Goddard really not doing that much. But yeah, A.J. Brown has been balling out, the last 4 weeks, it's type of thing. And then Scary Terry having a quieter game, but still 4 TDs through 4 different guys, further solidifying that Howell is, a great QB, only having 1 sack against him and throwing for almost 400 yards. That is a feat against a Philadelphia defense that I think you would expect to perform better, to be honest with you. But clearly, they weren't able to get past the Commanders' O-line to Howell, and he was able to have, a really, really good game. Obviously passing for 52, even though they seemingly had, success running it on a few plays. But I think that this was kind of a show that we can be a good offense on the Commanders type game, and that with the points they given up, maybe they were like, maybe it is time to move on from these guys because they're not giving our defense what we need to do well. That's the only thing that I can think of. I'm kind of baffled by it, but you know, maybe Chase Young was unhappy too. It wouldn't surprise me with this team, but yeah, crazy things by the Commanders, and we'll see what they're like going forward, but I don't expect them to win a lot of games, I guess, with, unless their defense can somehow, perform better without Young and Sweat, but I just don't see it. But great win by the Eagles, the only one-loss team left as well. Looking like they could potentially run away with um, the first round bye for the playoffs, but they definitely need to fix some things on defense. Go moving on, we have Browns Seahawks. I thought the Seahawks were honestly going to lose this game. I thought the Browns, were going to get after Geno Smith quite a bit. They only got to him once. That I think is a good sign for the Seattle, coming up and taking the first place spot in their division with a loss from the Niners is really crazy to me. I would never have expected this type of thing. But clearly, scoring 24 points against the top ranked defense, I think that the Seahawks are in contention to possibly make a run for the number 1 spot, given the shaky circumstances of the Eagles, where they just gave up a lot of points. Maybe their defense has a lot more flaws this year, and we'll see what it's like going forward. But Geno Smith having a sound game, 2 picks is kind of bad, but it is the top ranked defense, probably rushed. That's probably why there weren't a couple more sacks. But yeah, this team, 2 picks as well for the Seahawks. So ultimately, offsetting each other in terms of turnover differential. But what a great win for Seattle is all I'll say. And they can definitely correct some things here and be a very, very tough team that I think, this is the best they've been since Legion of Boom days. And they're definitely not there yet, to where to the Legion of Boom days. They need some things to clean up on offense, in my opinion, but very good win for them. And probably a loss that the Browns, pretty sad about, I guess, But yeah, great win by the Seahawks. Moving on, we have Ravens Cardinals. The Ravens scoring quite a bit early. And then, Arizona having a fat kind of crazy thing happen in the second or in the last quarter of the game where they score 17 and ultimately make this game look like it was a lot closer than it was, you know, 31 to 24, one touchdown difference. I think that Baltimore is doing, some really, really great things, and it's crazy, how much distribution that they had and that but that Arizona was able to contain Lamar Jackson quite a bit, even in the run game, you know, but I would say that, Baltimore is probably thinking that we we are kind of we're kind of lucky, in a game like this. But yeah, Joshua Dobbs throwing 2 picks, just never good, I think being the deciding factor. So in this game, because clearly Baltimore couldn't move the ball very well, in this ball game. Um, Moving on to Kansas City Chiefs and the Broncos. Craziest thing ever. I just don't understand how the Chiefs keep on killing themselves. I am not going to give any credit to the Broncos, seen as Russell Wilson only threw for just over 100 this game. And it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me what's going on with Mahomes throwing 2 picks. Clearly, just, one of the picks I'm pretty sure was pretty bad. And just, oh my goodness. That wave that they were riding with Taylor Swift, I guess I don't know if she was at the game or anything like that, but clearly Kelsey didn't have the game that he would want. Rashee Rice, who's been doing well, but they have all these guys that just aren't, they're not catching footballs, and oh my goodness, I just don't know how. It's like Mahomes, and he just looked defeated and deflated on the sideline, but ultimately it's like the thing here is that the Broncos, the defense showed up. The defense is what showed up this game, which is really shocking after, excuse me, giving up a 70-point game, earlier this season. But still, not much from Russell Wilson. I don't know what to say. Like, they're not going to win very many games this way. I do think this is a huge outlander fluke game, and I'm not just saying that because I hate Russell Wilson, but it just goes to show that it's like you only completed 12 passes, my guy, for 100 yards. So I don't know what to say, I guess, about this team. And you can't tell me that you can't tell me that the head coach of, the Broncos is, Sean Payton. You can't tell me he's that happy with this, even though they won and they ended this insane drought. It's like, who cares? You really benefited from another game where this reminds me a little bit of the week 1 loss that Kansas City suffered to the Lions, where ultimately you beat yourself really, really bad, because of the wide receiver play, which is just, it's mind boggling to me. But moving on, we have Bengals 49ers. I thought this was going to be I thought it was going to be a close game. I didn't think that the Niners were going to be so bad again, but Brock Purdy, inconsistent again with 2 picks, and still able to throw for 365 yards. But it's like I've said in the past, you can have incredible yards. It's like, I don't know, Kirk Cousins when the Vikings weren't winning any games early in the year, where he was having insane yards. He had, until he went out on Sunday, I'm pretty sure he's had the most throwing touchdowns in the league. But they just don't have that much to show for it. Yeah, they're on a win streak now, but it's like, it it goes to show that, against a team like the Bengals, you can have just the one play that debunks a whole drive, making all those yards dead yards, apparently. to me. And, Christian McCaffrey kind of having a down day, limited on his carries, still good average. Brock Purdy being able to scramble, a bit too. And Kittle and Ayuk both having days. No Debo. They still put up plenty of yards. Clearly Shanahan had a good plan for this game, but it's just crazy to me to think that Purdy doing this well and then he has two throws. It reminds me a little bit of, Dak Prescott, where he had a good amount of yards, a good amount of completions, seemingly had a red hot game, but would have the one he had the one interception this week where it's like, oh, you're dominating, but yet you're gonna have these plays that ultimately debunk, some of your yards and, your elite level of play. Because I mean, if you have Brock Purdy throwing for this much yards and one of these, both of these are gone and he has like two TDs, you're happy. Maybe you want more touchdowns, but you can't complain about having over 350 passing yards in a game and no picks and two TDs. But, Joe Burrow looking like that elite level quarterback where it's like he, you know, threw for far less, but only missed four of his passes. A couple to Chase, one to Higgins, and then another. I guess we don't even know. Oh, to Drew Sample. And yeah, this is the kind of time of the year where Cincinnati needs to get hot. If you're not getting hot this time of year and you continue to look rough around the edges type of thing, then, crazy. But looking at even this, he was sacked 3 times still, but still didn't cave to the pressure type of thing. And then you look at, Logan Wilson, one of the better linebackers in the league, and Jermaine Pratt each getting a pick. Crazy good game from Cincinnati. I think, even though the 49ers have been having a rough patch, I still think it holds relevance that you beat a team like this that is clearly well coached and just a couple of mistakes are what debunk their game. So good game by the Bengals. Moving on to Bears Chargers. This doesn't really surprise me all too much. Herbert with a great day. Clearly they didn't have any pressures or sacks on Herbert. It kind of surprises me, I guess, a little bit that he didn't have even more completions. But, they didn't really run the ball very well against the Bears. But yeah, then they have the receiving. They have Eckler, Allen, Quinn Johnston, who I think is, doing really well. I really like that they got this guy, and he's doing well and he's being a contributor right away. You know, Austin Eckler with a fumble uncharacteristic, probably still, I think what was this, his second game back or whatever? Yeah, I think his second or third game back. And just an overall good game by the Chargers and not allowing any run defense. Tyson Bagent still, obviously fairly new, having a good amount of yards, but 2 picks not being good. And, Derwin James and Jasir Taylor with picks. And just overall, obviously, nobody on this team getting any pressure. Yeah, for the defensive side of the ball. So that's why they went and they got Montez Sweat, because clearly he's going to be an instant impact player, starter for them. That's going to be doing well, but not a shocking win by the Chargers, who are in a division that who knows whether or not, they're going to be able to make the playoffs with their record going, having been 7 games in with 9 games out till the end of the season. Moving on, we have Raiders Lions. I'm not going to lie. It is ridiculous to me that you still have McDaniels coaching. He is an utterly terrible coach. And yes, this is going to be a mini rant. And the fact that they were like, yeah, we're just going to get rid of Carr. I think that Carr is better than Garoppolo. I was watching some things earlier today. Where they were saying that they upgraded the position with Jimmy G. And it's crazy to me thinking this because he failed the physical. We all remember this. He failed the physical, but they kept him around. They decided not to go after anybody else, because McDaniel's hard on for running his version of the New England when he's been on a plethora of teams and he has sucked on every single one. He has sucked on every single one. The Rams, the Broncos, now the Raiders. This guy should have been fired after last night's game. I do not care about how much money he has on the books. He is not a player. And he is the next most important position on a football team after the quarterback, as far as I'm concerned. Because honestly, you could have a great legendary head coach, but if you give him the worst quarterback in the league, what are they going to do? It's like if you give Andy Reid right now and you go and you give him the biggest no-name QB in the league. Who's the worst starter that we can think of in the league? I don't like to roast people like this, and I'm not sure, honestly, who to even say. I'm trying to think of who is bad, really, really bad in the league right now. Maybe give him Desmond Ridder, honestly, who has been playing inconsistent as hell. Give him the inconsistent version of Ridder, and what is he going to do? What would Andy Reid do? But, you need a tandem of a QB and a coach in today's league. It is just necessary to be good in the league. And then you even have, the plays where you have Davante Adams. And one of the reasons I'm so pissed is because my boy Davante Adams, who came here to play with Carr, and then they do him dirty by getting rid of Carr after he has the second best season of his career, 14 touchdowns, over 1,500 yards for my boy Davante Adams. And this year, it looks like there is no way in hell he hits 1,000 yards. No way. You've got Jimmy G, who has had, in my opinion, he's had a notoriously bad deep ball. And he missed Davante when he was 5 yards past the wide receiver. People act like, and you can't say anything about Davante slamming his helmet. It's the most diva-like thing that he's, probably ever done, And then even when they meet it with him in the locker room, he's like, oh, I don't know what to say. And it just makes me, livid that he is the kind of guy that he might be to the point where he's gone to hell and back. They're in hell right now, the Raiders. At least Davante is in hell with the Raiders offense. The defense, has its own problems, but it isn't as bad as the offense this year. It's like you have the leading rusher last year in Josh Jacobs, and he even goes on to, and even when they talk to him, he even goes on to say, he's like, oh, that's not my job. It's like, it just sounds like, he would, it sounds to me like, both him and Davante should have left this shit show of a Raiders team. This shit show of a Raiders team that does not deserve either Josh Jacobs or Davante Adams, as far as I'm concerned. And then even looking at Myers, I think Jacoby Myers, should even be off this team. It's like they get him involved quite a bit, over several games. Michael Mayer is probably thinking God, what kind of mess did I get drafted into? Austin Hooper's probably thinking he could have been on another team, a serviceable team as a second tight end at least, because Austin Hooper used to be kind of one of the sounds of the league. And then even Hunter Renfrow. Like, this is a very capable group on the offense, and they cannot figure out a single goddamn thing of what to do with it. And then you've got Garoppolo, who it's like missed time, but still has the most interceptions in the league. And I get that the line isn't holding up very well, but it's like, it's still no excuse to miss the throws that you have. You're supposed to be a veteran pocket quarterback, like, that isn't missing these guys by a lot when you are clearly making clean throws. You might be pressured, but you have every opportunity to make it a clean throw on a wide open Devontae Adams, who it's not like he's a friggin' dinky, tiny wide receiver. And he's not the biggest either, but he is a 6'2", who had like a 40-inch vertical out of the combine when he, first entered the league, who can go and get a ball. But you have this fucking, Jimmy G, Jimmy go home, Jimmy, let's go home, Garoppolo. I don't know what to say. Jimmy Garoppolo is a joke, clearly. And then, they wanted to say that Derek Carr was a worse quarterback. At least he got his playmakers the ball. But crazy to me that this is going on. And I'm livid. I don't know what to say. It's about the end of the trade deadline. We're going to go look here real quick. It doesn't look like there's very much happening at the trade deadline, which is, sometimes there's years like that. But this team, what a joke. What a joke. The Raiders team. It's like McDaniels should be fired. I almost feel like he should have been fired after last year. I don't know, what the owner was thinking. It just gives me a sense that he doesn't know what the hell he doesn't know jack about football, But moving on, we'll look at the Lions real quick. You look at the Lions, pretty solid game by, or not pretty solid, pretty average for Goff. Throwing an interception and 1 TD, 272 off of 26 passes completed. Jahmyr Gibbs, though, just roasting this Raiders defense, roasting them, And then you even have Craig Reynolds, who knows who this is, and he's roasting them. So over 200 yards of rushing from your two lead horses, where, and then you have Goff and Khalif Raymond, clearly having some off things here. But then you do have a good day from Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta doing pretty well. And it is just, it's mind-boggling to me. And then you have, McNeil, Anzalone, Walker. Surprisingly, you don't have Hutchinson with a sack, a quiet night for him, but, 6 sacks on Jimmy G. But it's still no excuse. You're supposed to be a veteran in this league. As far as I'm concerned, Jimmy G, he even suffers from a little bit of immaturity, to me, where it's like when he was asked about the Niners, when they traded Trey Lance, he seemed to think that the Niners had problems at QB. My guy, you are your own problem and issue. It's like you shouldn't even be the starter on a team. You should be a backup. But yeah, you got pressured a lot, but it's like, goodness, I don't know what to say. Like, the Raiders, the fact that they scored 2 touchdowns is kind of crazy to me. Crazy, given the way that it happens. And it's like, they could honestly be my worst team at this point this year. Many people want to say the Cardinals, but the Cardinals actually put up a game. where they at least scored some points. But, you got the Raiders. What a joke. What a horrendous joke. But yeah, you know, and the Detroit Lions. Kind of crazy to me that it's like, you do get, all this pressure, but you only get six. I mean, I say you only get 6 sacks, but yeah, Jimmy G clearly just throwing it up for the stars and out of bounds. And God, who knows and who cares? Um, yeah, we're gonna move on, and we're gonna move on to Thursday night football. Um, we have Tennessee and Pittsburgh. Looking at this game, they do say Pittsburgh victory, but it's only like a 50%. It's a 50-50 margin essentially. Um, Looking at this game, Pickett said he's playing. That doesn't really give me the vote of confidence. I'm not gonna lie. He hasn't been playing the best this year. Only 5 TDs at this point. You've got clearly a 4-3 Pittsburgh Steelers team that, yes, they could still logically get a playoff spot, but they're in a very, very, very tough division. Looking at the injury report, you don't have Minka Fitzpatrick. And, I'm assuming that Will Levis is probably going to play. Yeah, they have Tannehill and they say, questionable. And that was today, Tuesday. So with only one more day to go, but I personally, if I'm the Titans, I'm playing Will Levis. I find it kind of shocking. Now we're officially, a few minutes past the trade deadline, so let's go check this again. I thought Tannehill would get dealt, to be honest with you, because I think that they could still get something for him from one of these teams with struggling quarterback play. But clearly not. Jeffrey Simmons is going to play. This is a smokescreen. McCreary is going to play, I'm pretty sure. I think that, I'm actually thinking of giving this game to the Titans if Will Levis plays. I think that Tannehill is washed. He doesn't have a terrible completion percentage this year, but even so, you were unable to score points. And then you have Will Levis come in and seemingly make it look easy against, against a good defense last week in the Atlanta Falcons. And I mean, you're looking at this, Pittsburgh, they need a win here. They could easily fall to bottom of their division with a 500 record. Crazy to say that, I know, with Cleveland and Cincinnati, the teams that they are, even though Cleveland lost last week. But, Cleveland's playing Arizona. That's almost a free win. And then looking at where are the Bengals? You have the Bengals in Buffalo, so maybe they don't win. I do think that, the problems with Buffalo and their defense will really show against Burrow. But looking at this game, you have Pickett. He said he's going to play. I believe that. If he doesn't, they really don't have a shot, but you really got to get your run game going against a Tennessee team that was able to apply a lot of pressure last week when they went up against a better O-line than Pittsburgh did with the Falcons. Maybe they just got lucky and they were just red hot for a game, but I just don't really think so. I think that defense does rely on Simmons and Harold Landry the third. I actually am going to go with the Titans for this game. I think that, Pittsburgh is feeling the heat. I don't think that they're going to do very well, on a short week. I think the Titans, with the way that their defense played, I think that defense is what wins these Thursday night games, a lot. And I think that Pittsburgh being too banged up, I just don't see them winning. I'm actually really kind of shocked that they do say it is this way. But I think that Derrick Henry could have a day. And I think that Will Levis, I don't think he'll quite have the day that he did against the Falcons because I think Pittsburgh is right around the same kind of level, but they do have, I think, a better pass rush. And I think that Watt is going to be getting after Levis. But I am going to go with Tennessee. And I guess my prediction is that they win by 7 points. Let's look real quick. Is there any actual things that they're just announcing late? It doesn't look like it. Um, Trade tracker. Let's look at this real quick. Oh, no way in hell. We traded Rasul Douglas to Buffalo for a fifth round, a fourth or a third. Oh, we got a third out of him and we're trading a fifth. Okay. Interesting there. Okay, that's kind of crazy. I wouldn't have thought Rasul would be on his way out. Really a fan favorite, a guy that I really, really, really liked, I guess. It makes me kind of sad. I hope that he does well with Buffalo though. And I think that, and I want to let the Buffalo Bills fans know that you guys got a hell of a scrappy player. This must be due to the fact that Tre'Davious White, is out. And I think that the Bills will utilize him better, being that they are a scrappy and grungy defense that plays physical on the line, which is what Russell Douglas is best at. So I'm really sad to see Rasul go, to be honest with you. But, good luck in Buffalo, and I wish you the best. Um, Lions add veteran wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think that he just didn't really fit with the Browns. They obviously got him for pretty cheap. I think the Lions are just kind of solidify and find somewhat of a spark outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown because they've had really inconsistent play. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. But then yeah, we all know that Chase Young went to the Niners for a third round draft pick. I think that is, crazy. Um this is interesting to me. Ezra Cleveland, I'm pretty sure didn't play Sunday. Maybe it was because they were worried about this and that they were shopping him. They got a 6th round pick for him. I really don't think this is a very good trade for the Vikings, but maybe it's prompted because they think that they're not going to be able to do well without Kirk. Interesting to see what the Vikings do and how they play going forward because clearly they could still make the playoffs, but maybe they want to play for the draft. Interesting. Oh, and then yep, the Dobbs trade. So essentially, Arizona got a 6th round pick, traded up their 6th round pick, or I mean their 7th for a 6th round pick type of thing. We have Montez Sweat obviously to the Bears for a 2nd rounder. Clearly, the Commanders got a good deal on this. Maybe that was another reason, why type of thing. But Falcons, Grady Jarrett having an injury, the Falcons still very much in playoff contention. But yeah, it looks to me like all of these are kind of old trades. The one other major trade that I thought was crazy was the Titans trading Kevin Byard to Philadelphia. They did get Terrell Edmonds, who's a pretty serviceable safety, and a couple of picks, to be honest, because Kevin Byard is a very sound safety. And I think that, the Eagles are definitely kind of looking to maybe not have, get blown up as much in the passing game. But yeah, looking at this, these are all old. There's nothing else here. A really, really, really quiet, trade deadline, this year. And Goodness, I never thought that my Packers would trade Rasul Douglas. There was speculation, and I mean, who knows? I think that Rasul has been getting kind of frustrated, and has been giving up some plays and looking uncharacteristic, maybe like he's given up on some plays, but he's a cornerback at the age, where he definitely wants to play for a contender, but yeah, this is still kind of surprising that, you know, the Packers only moved up for a fourth rounder with Russell, to be honest with you, who, I obviously the Packers were sellers here, you know, for this. But yeah, crazy quiet at the deadline, I guess. Unless some other random ones emerge, I guess. Um, but yeah, crazy dead at the deadline when it sounded like there was a lot of teams that were trying to move players. But, with that, this is, I'll ask you if anybody's listening and they want to talk about anything that's happened or last week's games or the Thursday night game. I'll leave, the floor open to you guys. Um, but otherwise, crazy quiet at the deadline where the only, team really, I guess, heavy in the trade market was the Commanders, trying to solidify draft picks for next year's draft with the trades of Montez Sweat and Chase Young. But yeah, if nobody's gonna say anything, that is this Tuesday edition of Cast, and I'll see you guys on Saturday. Thank you all for watching.